Rio de Janeiro. You think of beauty, right? Postcard beaches, iconic mountains. But there's a shocking paradox hiding in plain sight. Seriously, look at any photo of Rio. You'll see these incredible luxury buildings right next to these massive, densely packed communities on the hillsides. How can two totally different worlds exist, literally inches apart? Okay, let's get into it, because the real story here is gonna blow your mind.
Look at this. This right here is the whole paradox in two numbers. On one side, you've got Leblon, the most expensive piece of real estate in all of Brazil. We're talking 28,000 reais for a single square meter. And then bam, right next door, not across town, but right there, is Rocinha, one of the biggest favelas in Latin America. The same square meter there, 4,000. This isn't some abstract problem. It's a daily reality staring everyone right in the face.
And this is not some small, isolated issue. We are talking about a huge chunk of the city's population. Right now, nearly 1 out of every 4 people living in Rio's capital city lives in a favela. Just let that sink in for a second. A full quarter of the entire city. The official number is over 800 favelas. But here's the thing about that number, it's already wrong. It's constantly growing, which means by the time they count them, there are already more. So the real question is, why? Why here, in Brazil's most famous, most beautiful city?
Well, to unravel this whole thing, we've got to go back, way back. And believe it or not, the origin story of Rio's favelas starts with a forgotten war, a government's broken promise, and an act of rebellion that completely changed the face of the city forever.
So, take a guess. Where do you think the very first community that was ever called a favela actually appeared? Somewhere in the hills behind Copacabana, maybe? Near the downtown area? The truth is so much weirder than that.
The story doesn't even start in Rio. Nope, it begins 1,500 kilometers away in the dry, dusty backlands of Bahia, in the ashes of a really brutal conflict from the late 1800s, called the War of Canudos.
Here's how it all went down. After the government won the War of Canudos, the soldiers were shipped back to Rio, which was the capital back then. They were promised their pay and, this is the crucial part, homes for their service. But the new government basically said, oops, we're broke, they broke their promise. So you have these war veterans, abandoned, with nowhere to go. They did the only thing they could do. They took matters into their own hands and occupied an empty hill right near the center of the city.
And this is where the name itself comes from, which is just incredible. They called their new home Morro da Favela, Favela Hill, naming it after this super tough, thorny plant that grew all over the region where they had just been fighting. It was a symbol of their own resilience, their own survival. And just like that, the first favela was born, all from a government's betrayal.
But okay, one broken promise, one settlement, that doesn't explain the hundreds and hundreds of favelas that exist today. For that piece of the puzzle, we have to look at a map of Rio. Because it turns out, the city's greatest asset, its jaw-dropping beauty, is also its biggest trap. You see, that first act of occupation by the soldiers, it landed in the middle of a perfect storm, all thanks to Rio's crazy geography. The city is literally squeezed, pinned, between these massive granite mountains on one side and the Atlantic Ocean on the other. There's almost no flat land to build on.
And Rio isn't the only place like this. Look at this pattern. You see it in states like Amazonas, where the capital Manaus is completely surrounded by the rainforest, or Espírito Santo, which is all mountains. When a city can't grow outwards, it only has one direction to go, up. And Rio is the ultimate example of a city in a geographic chokehold.
All right, now let's fast forward into the 20th century. You take that geographic pressure cooker we just talked about and you add one more ingredient, a massive wave of people moving to the city. The city was completely and totally overwhelmed.
Just look at these numbers from 1900. Rio was the nation's capital, so it was already a huge magnet for people. It had over 800,000 residents. Now, for perspective, São Paulo, the city that would become this economic behemoth, had less than a third of that. Rio was already packed to the gills before the big industrial boom even kicked off.
And this created a ruthless, unstoppable cycle. Millions of people flooded in from the countryside looking for work. They arrived in a city that had zero plan, absolutely no housing for them. The wealthy elites, of course, scooped up all the good, flat land by the beaches. So what was left for everyone else? The only free real estate available, the steep, dangerous hillsides. They had no other choice but to build up.
So you take the history, the geography, and the migration, you throw it all together, and it creates the reality we see today in Rio. Literally, a city within a city. It has its own economy, its own culture, its own rules, all existing right out in the open. Let's circle back to that staggering number. Again, almost 25% of the entire population. This isn't some fringe community. This is a fundamental, structural part of what makes Rio, well, Rio.
And now, for what might be the most mind-bending statistic of all. Get this, the favelas take up only 7% of Rio's land. 7%. But squeezed into that tiny sliver of the city is nearly 25% of its people. The density is just off the charts. It's a true paradox of space and humanity.
So, here's the real takeaway. What started out as a temporary fix for some abandoned soldiers ended up becoming the only viable solution for millions of people. And over a century, the favelas stopped being a problem that needed to be solved and became a permanent, structural, and honestly, an undeniable part of Rio's very identity.
Which leaves us with a really provocative question for the future. As these megacities all over the world just keep getting bigger, is the favela a sign of failure? Or is it actually an inevitable, maybe even an ingenious solution to a housing crisis? There's no easy answer here. What's your theory? I want you to drop it in the comments below. Let's start a real debate. And don't just leave a comment, find one that makes you think or one you disagree with and reply to it. Let's get a real conversation going. If you love explainers like this that actually challenge you to think, do us a favor, hit that like button and subscribe. We're building a community here for people who aren't afraid to dig deeper. Trust me, you are not going to want to miss what we have coming up next.